few MMA-related items, of course, coming up this weekend, UFC Poland, Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Darren Till. So Darren Till, I'm not sure if he's live in Poland right now, but he's going to join us in about 15 minutes. So we very much look forward to talking to the gorilla Darren Till and getting a little preview and predictions on that. But we are amidst a massive stretch for the UFC, Kenny. I think it's like 10 shows in 9 weeks between now and December 16th. And people have suggested at times that it's been a lean year for the UFC. Certainly the pay-per-view numbers would speak to that. Conor McGregor hasn't walked through that door in 2017. There have also been injuries and extending circumstances that there always are that affect the UFC calendar. But oftentimes the result, the carryover, is a massive, massive fourth quarter for the MMA leader. And that's the way it shakes out. And I want to say to the people in Winnipeg, you know, everything that maybe Edmonton or other shows weren't, this show is. So December 16th on Fox, Kenny, I think all of these fights being announced since we were last on the air. Robbie Lawler against Rafael dos Anjos is the main event, and that is certainly a welterweight title eliminator. You've also got Platinum Mike Perry taking on Santiago Ponzinibbio. Ponzinibbio's won 5 in a row to get into the top 10. So at 170 pounds, Kenny, 2 massive fights that Winnipeg is getting here. And I know Platinum Mike Perry was hoping for the Lawler fight. Why not ask for it? I understand that line of thinking. But this dos Anjos-Lawler fight really shapes up as an eliminator. You've got Masvidal and, of course, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson going to fight 1 month prior. But big show for Winnipeg, and it begins at the top with the return of Robbie Lawler against a very busy and active RDA.
Yeah, absolutely, and what a great fight that is. I mean, 2 southpaws who were very aggressive, who like to stand up. I believe Dos Anjos is kind of going to try to mix it up and take him to the ground. But for the most part, those guys will be standing, and they will absolutely deliver. I see one of those guys getting knocked out. And Ponzinibbio and Perry, I mean, again, another fight that is just beautiful matchmaking right there. 2 guys that are very proud fighters that are going to try to keep it on the feet. They're going to try to knock each other's heads off. So I expect 2 knockouts there for both those fights.
And if that's not enough, Jose Aldo returns in the second meeting here with Ricardo Lamas. The last time they fought, of course, it was for 5 rounds for the UFC featherweight title. This one will not be. But Jose Aldo, right, I know for you, Kenny, obviously, as somebody who fought him, you know, he's must-see television for you. But he is still one of the biggest superstars we have in the UFC and one of the biggest names on this roster. And there is always tremendous intrigue, I think, when the King of Rio competes, even if not in a championship setting. And here, taking on a very dangerous Ricardo Lamas, coming off that finish of Mississippi Mean. I just think it shapes up as a very interesting fight. And for Jose Aldo, right, good litmus test. We saw how strongly he came back against Frankie Edgar after the Conor McGregor defeat. But this Max Holloway loss, Kenny, and the nature of it was a different animal. And I'm very interested to see what version of Jose Aldo we get actually 2 months from today in Winnipeg.
That's the big question for me, because although he was winning the majority of that fight against Max Holloway, or early on especially, as the fight went on, it seemed like it was the Jose Aldo that kind of loses interest in the fight. It seemed like he was a little bit bored, or maybe didn't want to work as hard as he normally does during the fight. So he didn't have that same kind of pep in his step. And Holloway just took it to him, kept pressuring him backwards, and Holloway just broke him, I think, mentally, and then took him out with skill. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. So for Aldo, this is an interesting fight to see. Okay, are you still motivated to fight? Are you still out there to win and put out your best performance? And especially against a guy who he already beat. So we're going to find out pretty quickly what Jose Aldo is all about, and if he truly wants to get back to the top of this division.
Also on that Winnipeg card, December 16th, Misha Serkunov taking on Glover Teixeira. Huge fight, getting a little bit buried by how top-heavy this card is. The Killer Gorilla Jared Cannonier taking on Little Nog, Tim Elliott, Justin Scoggins on the card, and our man Olawale, the Holy War Angel Bamboche. So I'm excited. December 16th, you can see it from Winnipeg on Big Fox. So this weekend, Kenny, it's UFC Fight Pass for Donald Cowboy Cerrone and Darren Till. And I always think it's nice coming off a bye week for the UFC because they only happen 10 or 11 times a year, right? We're live 40 of 52 weeks or so. Mm-hmm. So there's always a lot of anticipation when we take just 1 week off. And so I think a lot of people are going to tune in to Fight Pass and watch this between Donald Cerrone and Darren Till. And one thing I love about it, and part of the reason why I booked Darren Till today, is Too infrequently in the UFC do you see a guy like Darren Till getting an opportunity of this magnitude. And there are a lot of reasons why. For Donald Cerrone to take this fight, there's obvious risk. Not just he's taken on an undefeated fighter, but he's taken on a guy who is the far less known quantity. He's not a ranked guy. Most casual fans don't know who Darren Till is. And so a lot of guys in Donald Cerrone's position, Kenny, entrenched in the top 5 or 7 of a division, they don't take these fights, even if they are main events. And Donald Cerrone has perpetually taken these fights. You know, Alex Cowboy Oliveira had his chance to build his name off of Cowboy Cerrone in a main event. And Oliveira's gone on to do great things since that fight, right? But Donald Cerrone gives guys like Darren Till an opportunity to build their names when more often than not the superstars in the modern day just aren't doing that.
You know, honestly, I don't even know if it's about Cerrone giving these guys an opportunity. I think this guy just wants to fucking fight. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. And for a lot of guys that are out there and say, you know, I just want to fight, I want to stay active, and it doesn't matter who it is, I'm going to go out there and fight, it's a bunch of baloney. When Cerrone says it, he actually means it, and he goes out and fights whoever it is. If you're on the schedule and that's a date that they give you and he wants to fight on that date, it doesn't matter. He's going to fight you, especially a guy who's going to come to fight. That's what Cerrone wants to do. He wants to scrap, and that's why he's one of the most popular fighters in the world. People want to see Donald Cerrone fight because you know exactly what you're going to get. He's going to go out there and try to knock you out. And Darren Till is not an easy fight, style-wise. But I think that's a fight that is absolutely going to deliver. I'm not sure how long that's going to last. I think both those guys are kind of, again, tailor-made to fight each other. I think it's excellent matchmaking as far as styles. But you know, does Darren Till deserve a shot at Donald Cerrone? Probably not. Not based on what he's done. He hasn't faced the level of competition of a Donald Cerrone. But this is a winnable fight for him. I think he's still a little bit young, but there's no doubt that this guy is a special fighter. He has excellent stand-up skills. He's huge for the division. I think he gets up past 200 pounds sometimes.
Yeah, he does.
In the offseason. So, you know, when they call him the Gorilla, I think it's a pretty appropriate name.
Yeah, so we'll see what Darren Till can do this weekend against Donald Cerrone. Darren Till, slight underdog right now, so the line has compacted a little bit, so maybe some early action on Darren Till. We'll see where it closes. I would think some people would probably be salivating seeing Donald Cerrone in that minus 135, minus 140 range against a guy that people just don't know how good he is today. All right, main event. Familiar territory for Donald Cowboy Cerrone, 26th UFC appearance, but I guess the unfamiliar terrain. He's staring at his first 3-fight losing streak here, Kenny, in his pro career. He had never lost back-to-back fights before running into Masvidal and Lawler successively. So if he fails to come through here, it's 3 straight L's for Cowboy. He's the minus 140 favorite, plus 110 the comeback on the underdog, Darren Till. All right, we need a round and a method of victory here as well. Gabe Santone, who do you like in the main event, Cerrone or Till, and ultimately how do they get it done?
I think I'm gonna go with Cowboy here. It looks just by following him on social media and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all that. Looks like he's taking this pretty serious. He wants to get back on that winning streak. So I'm taking him. Second round TKO.
Second round TKO, the prediction for Gabe. All right, Ken Flo. Darren Till, sorry we couldn't bring him to you today. We couldn't connect with him internationally for some reason in Poland. He said it'll be easier when he's home next Monday, hopefully celebrating a win. I just heard back from Darren Till. Kenny, the question is, I know you believe in Darren Till, not necessarily that he has put forth the body of work that warrants this type of fight, but you'd be wise, of course, not to sleep on any undefeated fighter in the UFC at 55 or 70 or probably anywhere else. What kind of chance do you give Darren Till, and ultimately which way you go?
Well, listen, I think he's a fantastic striker, and I think he really has a very bright future. This kid is also very tough. You listen about his past and how willing he was to move to Brazil, to go to a different country to improve his skills. This is a guy who takes his martial arts and fighting career very, very seriously. However, I got to go with what I've seen. And, you know, beating Wendell de Oliveira, Nicholas Dalby, Jason Ayari, Bojan Velikovic, you know, while he's still undefeated, those aren't the same guys that Donald Cerrone has faced. And I think just based on